Imperialist hypocrisy marks Assange persecution. The contrast of Western treatment and coverage of the cases of Julian Assange and Alexei Navalny typifies imperialist hypocrisy. There is a double standard in the way Washington officials and the corporate media discuss free speech and freedom of the press, or justify who they endorse and who they disparage. The Workers' World article goes on to say why the imperialists hate Assange. Assange is being persecuted because through his organization WikiLeaks, Assange was able to release documents that exposed U.S. war crimes, particularly in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Guantanamo Bay prison. He released them to the corporate media, including establishment publications such as The Guardian in Britain, The New York Times in the U.S., and Der Spiegel in Germany. Journalists all over the globe admire and respect Assange for showing how genuine journalism should be practiced, but exposing U.S. war crimes and human rights violations made him an enemy to U.S. imperialism. In all their mourning and martyrdom of Navalny, neither the Biden administration nor the U.S. media bothered to mention the fact that Navalny was a xenophobic bigot who helped organize the white supremacist censorship Russian March in the 2000s. Navalny collaborated with neo-you-know-whos in calling for the violent removal of oppressed people from Russia. In 2007, his fascist affiliations led to his expulsion from the moderate Yabloko opposition party. Navalny was a proponent of privatization, union busting, and free market capitalism, which is why he was a darling of the US and other Western leaders who avoided mentioning his reactionary politics and instead portrayed Navalny as a victim and political dissident. Netflix even released a carefully crafted documentary about him in 2022. U.S. officials are presenting a false narrative that portrays Navalny as a purveyor of free thought while they seek to extradite an actual journalist for exposing their murderous war crimes. And here's other examples of imperialist hypocrisy. There are thousands of actual political and class war prisoners in the United States and around the world that the Biden administration and the corporate press refuse to discuss. On January 11, 2024, Chilean-American war commentator Gonzalo Lira mysteriously at the hands of Ukrainian forces. Lira was a strong critic of the Kyiv-based regime. He had been arbitrarily arrested at least twice following the Russian intervention of February 2022 and was never released after a second arrest in May 2023. There are other examples of people who have been arrested without charge, and even in Ukraine for expressing opposition to the country's President Zelensky and the U.S.-led proxy war against Russia. Mikhail and Alexander Kononovich, the Kononovich brothers, are another case in point. These Ukrainian brothers were wrongfully incarcerated since 2022 simply for being communist youth leaders in Ukraine. The Kononovich brothers made an appeal to the World Federation of Democratic Youth in July 2023, which was reprinted in Workers' World. In it, they declared that the Zelensky regime was planning their U.S. politicians obsessively spew hatred against Hamas Islamic resistance movement while refusing to acknowledge the censorship and war crimes being committed by the racist Israeli government. There are nearly 3,000 Palestinian prisoners who are being held without charge, and no one from the Biden administration has mentioned a word about their wrongful detention. Since October 7th, at least 10 Palestinian detainees have in Israeli prisons. Representatives of Washington have no right to talk about the conditions of prisoners in other countries. The U.S. has more prisoners than any other country in the world, even those with much larger populations. Among the workers incarcerated are political prisoners being held captive for their political convictions. Two of the most well-known U.S. political prisoners are Mumia Abu Jamal and Leonard Peltier. Both Mumia and Peltier have been wrongfully incarcerated for over 40 years and suffer severe health problems. U.S. leaders only care about free speech and freedom of the press when it suits their narrative. Ruling class surrogates and pro-imperialist propagandists who shed tears over Navalny's are the same ones who wish to silence political prisoners such as Mumia, Peltier, and Assange for challenging their power and exposing their lies. I'll include a link to the article in the description so you can read it in its entirety for yourself. You can follow Workers' World Party on Twitter at Workers' World. Workers' World Party is a revolutionary socialist organization that fights oppression across the U.S. and opposes imperialism around the world. Join us, belly of the imperialist beast, workers.org. Solidarity, comrades.